discipline. I love doing discipline, and she told me about the conference. I did some things for her with her students, working on relationship building and classroom, and I did some things at our school. And she said, I think it would be great. So she had me speak at the state conference. And I spoke at the state conference, and then she said, there's another one. And I said, well, I don't know if they want me there. And she kind of persuaded me to do it, and I just stepped into it.
All right. Well, you were voted best dressed, and you also had high marks on your presentation. And so then I think it was just last year you also did a webinar for us. Was it last year or year before last?
I did one. I think I did do it last year.
Okay. And so good news for you, Robert, is that in 2017, I know your heart will still be beating. In 2017, the National Health Science Conference will be in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you can just sign up to do another presentation, okay? Because it'll be right in your back door, right?
That'll be in when now?
Oh, it'll be in 2027,
Okay,
okay?
because you said 2017. I was
Oh,
thinking
sorry. I went backwards.
my mind was really, really, really going crazy then.
Help me out, Robert. Help me
Okay,
out.
we're good. We are good. But I got to tell you this. You're talking about being well dressed. I want to let you know something. See, you can put a tux on a pig. It's still a pig, right?
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
So
Well, is
I
that
appreciate the
lip?
compliment, but I was still plain on me.
Okay. I'm sorry, 2017. What was I thinking? All right, I'm in my final chapter of full-time work, and so you just have to excuse me. So 2017, October of 2017, the National Health Science Conference will be in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you keep looking at for that conference, and I'm sure that you would be welcome to do a presentation there, okay?
Well, if you all pick me to do one, I promise you I will be there.
All right. Well, everybody, this is Robert Daniels. He's a awesome, very common sense kind of guy who's dealt with students for a while. And he says that he welcomes you all to unmute yourself. And if you want to give him a hallelujah or you want to ask him a question. And so, Robert, is with that, I'm going to pass you the microphone.
Well, thank you, and I hope I live up to everything you said. You put a lot of pressure on me, but
Okay.
you know, dealing with behaviors and those type things, that's I kind of feel like that's what I was meant to do. I just my idea of discipline and everything I thought was just kind of warped. I've done that all my life. I can remember when I first started, I've done in school suspension, worked at an alternative school. When I was getting my degree in school administration, we had to do a project, and I was in Georgia, and I said, well, this school really doesn't have a plan of discipline. You go to one school, one room, it was one way, go to another room, it was another way, and it was all over the place. I said, why don't we try to put the school under one plan of discipline? So I ended up writing, make a long story short, I wrote a proposal for the school, and the school adopted it, and then other schools in the county adopted it, and then I had to go and teach that model to other schools in the state, and I taught them in other schools in South Carolina, and I just kind of just kept that mindset. I like dealing with discipline. I don't think that there are so much bad children. There are just different ways to deal with them. So I kind of delved into it. And I found out a couple of things just through working that is not what it is how we relate to it. So I've kind of put together some things and feel free to chime in anytime you want to. I would like for this to be a type of situation that we interact together. I truly believe everybody you know knows something you don't. So I can learn something from you all today. So please chime in. But we're going to try to focus on relationship building. Now, what do you think about this? This statement, positive relationships in a school are central to the well being of both students and teachers. and underpin an effective learning environment. Think about that for a minute. How important do you feel like relationships are in a school environment? Anybody? Do you think that they're important, first of all? Is it necessary to have relationships with students? Go ahead and unmute yourself and talk to me, please.
Absolutely. If you don't build relationships with your students, then they're not going to connect, they're not going to care, because those relationships help build that rapport and that respect, mutual respect between you and your students.
I agree 100%. Anybody else? Let me tell you this. Whether you know it or not, you already have a relationship with your students. If you're in there, as soon as you walk in the room, you're building a relationship. Now, it may be a positive one, it may be a negative one. But when you walk in a room, think about it. When you walk in that room, you start to analyze your students. Well, those students are analyzing you the same way. The difference is we as adults tend to express ours right away. We express, well, how do we express them? We express them how we greet them, how we look at them, body language. All of those things are sending messages. So those relationships start the minute you walk into the room. Okay. So it is totally important. A positive relationship is essential in the learning environment. Okay, now you can ask yourself, well, is it really necessary? Well, I spoke on relationships that students place on teachers, teachers place on students. Let's look at the relationships and expectations that are placed on students by teachers. I want to know, what are some of the things that you expect from your students? You have to tell me because I'm not in the classroom with you. Now, I can tell you some things that I feel like you do. I feel like you expect them to respect you. I really do. Anybody not want their students to respect them? I would think that everybody would. Okay. So that's something that's placed on students by teachers. Teachers expect those students to respect them. But we say that expectation of respect comes, but how does it come? Well, it's influenced by, I found to be one big thing now, because students have changed over the period, but there is a big gap in communication. Teachers now expect students to do what they tell them to do. And remember this, I want you to remember as we move on, I'm going to revert back to those two things. Just do it. Why? Because I say so. Keep those two in mind. Now, we say that students place expectations on teachers, and teachers also place expectations on students. Well, what kind of expectations do teachers place on students? Okay. Uh, we want them to do what they say do, then vice versa. When that student places expectation on the teachers, we want to be able to understand and trust us. Teachers want structure. Students want structure. If you look at structure, if you look at understanding, if you look at trust, if you look at flexibility, if you look at respect, we look at the communication piece. These are both placed on teachers by students, and they're placed on students by teachers. They are interchangeable. What student doesn't want respect? What teacher doesn't want respect? What student doesn't want trust and understanding? What teacher doesn't want trust and understanding? What teacher doesn't want structure? Students want structure. And flexibility has to be there. Has to be there. If we are so cut in our cloth of this is the way it's got to be, we're going to have problems. So these expectations that are placed on students by teachers and the ones that are placed on teachers by students are interchangeable. And we need to understand that we want the same from them that they want from us. Okay. Any questions? And stop me and interrupt me and chime in on your thoughts anytime you want to. Okay. Now, I think that there's a hierarchy in the classroom. There's a hierarchy. You have teachers and you have students. And that's without a doubt. And that has to be so. But the teacher is the leader in the classroom. They've got to understand they are the leader. And them being the leader in the classroom, there are some things that leaders have to do. These are what I call my 3 rules of leadership. The first thing is never let your ego go before the mission. Never let your ego go before the mission. What do I mean by that? If I put my ego before what I'm trying to accomplish, we're going to have problems. We're going to have problems. All of us have an ego. If anybody tells you they don't have an ego, they're not telling you the truth. Everybody has an ego. How do we contain that ego? How do we keep it under wraps? It has to stay under wraps. Somebody, have you ever had problems with student egos in your classroom? I need you all to talk to me.
Oh, I have, Robert, especially because I don't know about my friends on the call, but our classes in health science sometimes are very heavy female, and
Uh-huh.
especially if we had like 1 or 2 or 3 boys in there, they might really get too much attention. And so they might have inflated egos.
So
I
would
don't know.
you, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go right
I
ahead. Go
don't
ahead and
know
finish.
okay. They may, and that's been a long time ago. I was in the classroom, so the gender gap might not be that now.
I would say, if anything, rather than it getting better, it's gotten worse. People, you think about the students of today. Now, the students of today are different from the students of yesterday because the expectations are, I think we still expect the same thing, but how we get to that is totally different. We're different. We're dealing with a different type of student today. Um, Students today, the structure piece, honestly, from home is missing. If you think of the influences that students have today, that is totally deteriorated a lot. Um, Things like cell phones, the communication piece. Students now don't know how to communicate. So you're different with a different type of animal, so to speak. So it's important, never let your ego come before the mission. My next statement, I think, if you don't care about the people, they won't care about your mission. What do I mean by that? Well, if I don't show you I don't care about you as a person, you're not going to care about what I'm saying. You're not going to care about what I'm trying to get you to do. The mission is important. The mission is important. But my concern for the people receiving the mission often gets overlooked. Sometimes we get caught up on this is what I want, this is the mission, this is the goal. We look at the goal, but how do we get to the goal? We forget. The mission never changes. The mission stays the same. It's the journey to the mission that takes on a different face. So if you don't care about the people, they won't care about your mission. So now we see that in order for me to accomplish what I want to accomplish, in order for me to accomplish that goal, that mission, I've got to show those people involved that I care about them. If you think about leadership, in any type of situation, the person that's in charge, let's say they are my superior. Think back on situations where you had to deal with people that were over you. If they showed you they didn't care about you, how in tune were you to what they wanted you to do? I don't think you would be. So I really feel like, number one, if you let your ego come before your mission, you can't do that. You're going to have problems. If you don't care about the people, they won't care about your mission. And the last one, I mean, if you don't do number one or number two, you really aren't a leader. How can you lead if you put your ego before the mission? And how can you lead if you don't show the people you care about them? So these are my three rules of leadership. Questions, comments, concerns. You don't have to agree with them because these are mine. You may have some of your own, but I truly feel like you got to show people you care.
I think it's hard to do that, especially as the school year goes on and the students become more overwhelmed, which then makes them more apathetic, I think, to learning. And so then the mission is harder. And uh, not that we still don't care about their success, but I think when a student starts to not care about their success, then that makes it hard.
Okay, let me ask this question. When you run into that type of situation, what does your mission change at all? Do you kind of dumb it down that mission? Or do you still keep those high expectations?
For me, I still keep the high expectations because I don't want everybody to become apathetic and pick up on that culture, you know. So
Do
because
you
we
find
know
yourself?
we
Go ahead.
have some kids we have some kids who are in our programs in health science education who really don't want to go into healthcare, so they don't really understand the reason why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, it would be like any student who's in a course that they don't know why they're there, whether it's, AP bio or whatever it is. And so they lose that drive. And, they're just told year after year, now you need to take this class, now you need to take this class, rather than be able to take classes that would actually help them improve, is
Let
my
me ask.
feeling.
Let me ask this: why are they in that class? Why are they put in that
Um,
class?
For in my situation at my school, our
Huh?
students are in our program for 4 years, and so their parents want them to be in, what is considered an elite program within a comprehensive high school. And so, oftentimes parents think that by the students being in our programs, they're going to leave as doctors, not as at the level that, the entry level positions more so. They're not going to become doctors. And then I think as a student starts to lose interest rather than drop out of the program because they've invested time in it, they just stay in um, and graduate from the program. But if you were to poll the majority of the seniors about to graduate, and we've given over 200 certifications or more. I can think of maybe 8 kids that will actually use the certifications that they've earned. And so, what about all those other kids and what was the purpose of them being there?
You hit something that's very, very important. I'm at an early college, and at our early college, students have to apply. Each year, I bring in freshmen, and it's a limited number. This year, I'm bringing in 50 freshmen, and I had some 300 applicants. Now, one of the things I go out and I talk to students while they're in middle school, and the first statement I say to them, the very first statement I say to them is, this has to be something that you want. You can't come to my early college. You can't come here and really, really be successful the way you need to be if you're doing this for your parents. And when I talk to parents, and we have audiences with the parents, we say to the parents, we don't want you to have your students apply because you want them to. They got to want it. And one of the questions we ask them when we're doing the interviews, because we put our students in a safe space from the standpoint, we don't allow any parents in there when we interview them. And we ask them directly, are you doing this because you want to, or are you doing it because your parents want to? And parents will never find out the conversations or the results of the conversation we have, because we want to create a safe space for those students to say exactly how they feel. If they don't want to be in this, they're not going to be successful. And I think sometimes, even in different programs that you have, we have to ask those hard questions. Why are you doing this? Are you doing it because you want to do it? Or are you doing it because somebody else wants you to do it? We have to create, and that's where the trust and the relationship of trust comes in, because if you have that relationship, they'll answer some of these tough questions. And you can find out, number one, why that student's there. That's important to know why they are sitting in your classrooms. And if you know the why, if you know why they're sitting there, you can work around the other things. You can work with the other things. But again, that goes out to say how important that relationship is. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and unfortunately, in my state, I'm in Florida, and unfortunately, we have open enrollment and it's a lottery system. So we had
Mhm.
1,300 freshmen apply for the 25-26 school year, and we only take 100, but it's a lottery. So we don't get to talk to each of the students individually to find out if they're interested. It's just their names drawn out of a hat, basically. So that's a frustration because a lot of them aren't there and they're taking up the seats of the kids that really wanted to be there that didn't get in. So,
So
that's a whole nother topic that we could talk about.
yeah, that system is broken.
Yeah, it is.
System needs to be fixed. What do you do with those students when you find out they really don't want to be there and they're not being successful? What do you do with them? Do they just stay, or are they migrated to where they need to be?
No, they stay
And see
and struggle.
that's a broken system. That is a broken system.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
exactly.
okay. I think that in every situation, in every situation, there are three major words that have to be looked at. There are three. The first I call the what. And it's easy to find the what. What does the situation look like? What does the classroom look like? What is it? Describe the classroom. If you when I do these in person, I give the participants a sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, and I have them divided into 4 equal squares. Just a line down the middle and a line down across. And in the top square, I have them analyze, and you can do this on your own when you start thinking about this. And I want you to do some reflection after we're done. But think of the situation. What does the situation look like? And describe it, the negatives, the positives. I mean, the whole situation. You know, if you do that and you look and you put it on there, everything is positive, you're not being truthful. You got to put the negatives. You got to put the positives. You got to put it on there. That is the first step in forming a relationship with those students. But you got to know what it looks like first. And you got to be open and truthful about it. In a box, the next box, which would be to your right, you put in there, what do you want it to look like? Those two steps are easy. I can describe how it looks. I can describe that situation, the positiveness, the negativeness of that situation, real easy. We can always say what's wrong. We can always say what we want fixed, how we want it to fix, how we want it to look. Would you agree with that? Okay. Now, after you do the what, and we really take our time to describe it, I would take a highlighter and highlight the differences between what it looks like and what I want it to look like. And just kind of reflect on what it looks like, what I want it to look like. But that's the first step. That is the first word in all situations. And it doesn't have to just be with classroom discipline or whatever. Every situation, you can use this same model when you look at dealing with students, dealing with colleagues, dealing with situations, home. Every situation you can use this. So the first thing is the what. The second thing is the how. The how says, I know what it looks like. I know what I want it to look like. But how do I make it look the way I want to? So think about your classrooms. You honestly, there are situations in that classroom that aren't the way you want them. Tell me, how do you make it the way you want it? How have you dealt with things in the past? Somebody give me some examples. Think about situations. How have you made it look the way you wanted it to look? And you can be as honest if you need to be, really, because I'm not going to see you, I'm not going to judge you, but I'll speak on some of the situations that we've seen in the past. But look at your classrooms. And do you have any problems in those classrooms? Tell me how you make it look the way you want it.
This is Jody Sweeney. Can you hear me or no?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay. What we do in our classroom, before we even have kids enter the classroom, we have a parent meeting in August. And we go over what all the expectations are, what our grading system is. I'm in nurse assisting, so we discuss how we go about going to local nursing facilities and how attendance is very, very important, because we have an agreement with not only the health department and the state and federal laws. We want to make our customers happy, which are the people in the nursing facility. So we do a meeting in August before students even enter the classroom.
Okay, let me tell you what you just described. You just described the what, because everything that you're doing is showing what you want it to look like. Would you agree? What I want to know now is, if it doesn't look the way you want it, how do you make it look that way? So what would you do if you had students that didn't live up to those expectations that you all have? What do you do with those students?
Usually what we do is we revisit what we had talked about in August. And sometimes we do this too. We have a sign-in sheet at that meeting, and we will show the student that they signed into that meeting, and remind them that this is something that we had talked about in the past, and we try to hold them accountable to it.
Does it always work?
Definitely not.
Okay. Keep that thought. Hold that thought. Hold that thought right there. Somebody else, tell me about your what and your how. Okay, here's what I would say. Here's what I'm going to say. Your what is easy. Your what is easy. Your how is fairly easy because we have a tendency to say, all right, there are consequences for you not doing what we've asked you to do. Are students ever kicked out of the program? Has anybody ever had students kicked out of the program?
We have an agreement, our admin has an agreement, if students are very, very unsuccessful halfway through the year, that they have to return to their home schools. But they have to be very unsuccessful, and it has to be proven over and over that they haven't met goals, not only just a couple times, but repeatedly, week after week, day after day.
And how often do you have conversation with those kids before they're sent back?
Probably on an every other day basis, and we speak to parents almost on a weekly basis to let them know that their student is not performing up to standards.
Okay, describe for me some of the specifics in some of those conversations.
Well, again, we would refer back to the meeting that we had in August about what the expectations were. And for our program anyway, for nurse assisting, since we do have to follow federal laws, the students have to be able to perform skills, and they have to be present in the classroom a certain amount of hours in order to attend the clinical setting, in order to sit for their certification exam. So in some ways, we're bogged down by the rules that we have to follow, but in other ways, we have rules that we can fall back on to emphasize that what we're saying is not just something that's made on the local level, that we have to follow the rules at the federal level and state level too.
Okay, let me ask this question. Those students that come into your program, would you say that they are capable of completing the program? How many students that come in that program, that are allowed to come in that program, would you say aren't really capable of completing it?
I would say this past year we had 26 enter. I would say that maybe 2 were not capable.
Mhm.
Others were capable, but a lot of them have a poor work ethic prior to getting to us. So if they're not attending school, we can't say that they're successful in the program. So
Okay.
very, very few are not capable of doing the work.
So in that, when you get to that point, they're removed from the program.
Yeah, halfway through in January by Regents exam time, if they're not performing, and I'm saying very much below the 55% level. Not, we wouldn't send a student back who is at a 62.34, but they're usually way below the 65%.
Okay. The reason I'm asking those questions because those are leading to the most important. Remember I said there were 3 words, and in most cases, in the majority of cases that we've dealt with and things, the what was easy. We know what it looks like. We know what we want it to look like. The how is easy. They either removed from a program. They're either removed from the program or they just don't complete it because they don't perform up to that level. And it stops there. And if you think about most discipline type situations, or negative type situations, Those two aspects are identified very, very easy. Would you agree with that? What it looks like, what I want it to look like, and how I'm gonna make it look the way I want it. Are
Yes,
you following me that? Okay.
yes.
And a lot of times, guess it stops right there. Because once I've removed them from the program, they're done, right? Or if I allow them to continue the way that they were going, they're done. And we neglect to really look at the most important piece of it. And the most important piece is the why. That is the most critical and often the one that's left out the most. Why is that student not performing?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that student not performing? Now you think about it. In order for you to find out why that student, and especially if it's a student that's capable, that we know is capable, that we'll let go by the wayside because they're not performing, we don't enact the why. Now, the why does a couple of things. In order for me to find out why you're performing the way you're performing, we got to have some collaboration. And it's got to take place more than once. What does collaboration do? What does that do? What will the why do? The why opens communication. In order for me to find out why you did what you did, I got to talk to you. I've got to talk to you. What does it do? It gives me an understanding. It gives me an understanding. It increases trust.
Mm-hmm.
It increases respect. Because if I take the time and ask you why you're doing what you're doing, and I can get you to open up and talk to me, it increases respect. And the biggest thing, as that happens, we are developing a relationships. We are developing a relationship. See, if I know why you're doing it, I can help you fix it. But until I know why you're doing it, I can't help you. If you look at traditional schools, you have students that don't do work all the time. And a student that they say, well, they're being a distraction in the classroom. A distraction in the classroom doesn't always have to be a disrespectful student being vocal. A distraction in the classroom can be the student over in the corner that's sleeping. It can be a student that's just off task. If we a lot of times ignore that student and allow them to stay off task, allow them to go to sleep in the classroom, those type things, we aren't helping that student. Just a simple, are you feeling good today? Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you understand what we're doing? Just a little communication, just kind of tearing that wall down. Once they respond to a question, even if it's negative, you got their attention. Now I've had to decide, okay, was that a negative response? Was that a positive response? If it's negative in a lot of instructors' mind, the first thing is get them out. Get them out. But if I take the time to find out why they respond the way they are, I'm developing a relationship. We've got to develop relationships with kids from the standpoint of we got to show them we care.
Mm-hmm.
We got to show them we care. There's a thing that says nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I'm a firm believer, maybe I'm just crazy, but I feel like if we show kids that we care about them, more than just get the question right, answer the question, but I care about your well being, they'll cooperate. Once you develop that relationship or you start to tear those barriers down, the response that you will get from students will be positive. I promise you. Now, if you think about it, you take every situation and you look at the what. What does it look like? What do I want it to look like? And then you move to the how. How do I get it the other way? But before you do anything, before you go to the how, if you go to the why, if I take time to look at why they do it, the how is easy.
Mm.
All three of those things, if they're used, will complete it. They will that you can do it. But we've got to take the time to spend time with students, to understand them. I look at I'll show you this when I stop sharing the screen because I got something I want to show you, but I'm gonna leave. If take a minute, if you would, if just kind of jot down my contact number because I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because there's something I want to show you, and I have to stop sharing the screen to do it. But if you for a minute, just if you take a minute, just there's my contact information if you need it. But look at that statement: to reconstruct the classroom atmosphere and maximize the learning environment, facilitate each of the three components. If you do it, you're sure to develop a positive relationship. I have not met anybody that has not developed a positive relationship by not developing those three components. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen a minute because I want you able to see me face to face for a minute. And I hope I don't lose you because I'm not a tech genius, but I think I can do this. So here goes. Well, that didn't work. I want to get to so you can see me. And I'm going to try something else.
No, Robert, that
And
worked. That
you
worked,
can
Robert.
see me.
That
You
worked.
see
Don't
me?
do anything. Robert,
Okay, I'm not going to do anything else.
don't do
Can you
anything.
see me?
Don't turn anything off.
Okay. I see some at the top that says okay. Because I click that okay because I want you to see my full self a minute. So I'm
Oh,
going to. I don't think that's going to mess anything up.
I don't know what okay is,
Oh, it
but
says this meeting is being recorded. So okay. We're good. All right. Now here's what I feel. Here's the communication. In order for it to be effective, has a lock like this. Can everybody see? Can you see this real good? It
we
has a
can.
lock.
Yeah.
Now you look at a classroom. You have a hierarchy. You have teachers and you have students. You have teachers and students. Now, in order for communication to be effective, you've got students giving information, you got teachers giving information. If we stay on that hierarchy, look where the communication goes. Where's the understanding? Realistically speaking, teachers are above students. But if a student comes up to a teacher's level, what is that teacher going to do 9 times out of 10? They're going to raise their level because we as teachers, we don't want the students on our level. So now as the student comes to the teacher's level, the teacher does this. And you see, we create a ladder and we never have a communication joint. What has to happen? Teachers up here, students here. Teachers have to come down to students' level in order for that communication to really lock in. You cannot expect the students to step up to the teacher's level. I say this to teachers all the time, and I say this to students. I'll say to student, have you ever been, and I'm at a high school, I'm at an early college, and we get students as young as 14. They'll come in with problem and stuff, and I'll tell them how I feel about it and whatever. I'll say to them, they'll look at me, I say, well, have you ever, how old are you? They'll say 14. And I say, you know what? I've been 14. I know how you speak. Have you ever been 50? Have you ever been 60 or something? They'll look at me like, no, I ain't never been that. My point is, I know how you think, but you don't know how I think. If you keep that in mind, you know how those students think because you've been where they are. But they don't know how you think because they've never gotten there. So we've got to learn how to come down to their level, communicate, then move back up. If we can come down to their level and we can communicate, that's the relationship. Relationships aren't hard to build, but they're essential. They are essential. You have to have them. Now, whether you know it or not, you've established, everybody on this call has established a relationship with everybody they come in contact with. How deep is that relationship? I can't answer that. But you better know, as soon as you come in contact with a person, they're starting to analyze. That's human nature. That is nothing but human nature. Sometimes they let you know, sometimes they don't. But there are different clues on how you feel about a person. Body language, eye-to-eye contact. Those are the body language of a person says a lot. There's a thing that says, what you do is so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. What you do is so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. When that student is talking to you, are you looking them in the eye? If you're not looking in the eye, how do you expect them to do it? That eye contact is essential. How do I show a kid that I care? Sometimes it's what we say. More often it's what we do. More often than not, it's what we do. Now, I would strongly suggest that, and I have to do it with myself too. I take an inventory. If I go into a situation, when we get off this call, I'm going to try to take an inventory of myself. And 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some things, I wish I said this, I wish I said that. But I want to inventory, how did I perform? Every time we come in contact with students, we need to take an inventory on how effective do we think we were. We are dealing with young minds. If it's high school, I've got freshmen, 14 years old. There's no way they can figure what I'm thinking. But it is possible for me to figure what they're thinking. Sometimes I have to think back on when I was 14. Sometimes we have to recall, okay, what was it like to be in their shoes? And then the other thing I'll say is every student brings home to school. They don't always take school home, but they bring home to school. We've got to think about some of the things that these students went through. I can think of one situation I had where I was a principal, and I had a teacher that came in the office just furious. Kid goes to sleep every day, first block, every day, first block. Always sleeps in my class. I said, but have you thought about why? He's lazy. He just don't want to do it. But he never slept in second block, or third block, or fourth block. So I spent a little time with the young man. Found out every day, every night, his mom would disappear. He'd be left there to take care of the kids. There were times when he'd have to go out rummaging for food to feed his sibling. He stayed up all night every night trying to take care of the kids. The next day at school, he was tired. He was hungry. So what we started doing is we got him to school a little bit earlier, and we fed him and gave him a little time to just kind of breathe. Straight A student. The why. If we take the time to examine why students do what they do, it'll help solve a lot of problems. But one of the biggest problems it'll solve, in order to find out the why, I got to talk to you. I've got to talk to you. And when I talk to you, when I spend time, it shows that I care. And when students find out you care, they'll perform. So my suggestion would be, look at the what, figure out why, or how, but please, please, please examine the why. And if you can find out why they do what they do, your problems will do this. They will do this. Now, I've got some different exercises, and I gave you my contact number, and I've got some things that I will run off and send to you all individually. Some motivational things, some little exercises that you can use in your classrooms and those type things that I think that will help you develop some positive relationships. Let me say this: a person's perception is their reality. So that kid's perception of you is their reality of you. I've got some things I don't mind sending to you, but I will send to you if you just contact me and let me know.
Okay, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're up on the hour, but if you want to just email those things to me,
Okay.
and I'm going to stop this recording because I can't stand to hear myself talk too much.